Kirk Moore, contributing editor with WorkBoat magazine. I'm here with Joe Orgeron. He's a business and technology developer with Second Wind Marine. And I want to ask him to talk about his experience as a Gulf of Mexico operator, traveling up the East Coast to work on the Block Island wind farm project.
That's right.
What was different about that in your experience, and what did you learn?
Well, it started off probably in 2009, going up to do some scientific coring. And while up there, got engaged by several offshore wind developers. And I saw then that there was so much interest in Gulf of Mexico vessels up on the East Coast, sort of a little out of place to have those vessels up there, that there was something more there for operators on the Gulf Coast to look into. So I started going to offshore wind conferences and saw the niche in the construction and installation side and how to utilize the vessels along the full lifespan of what will become the U.S. offshore wind market. So I was up there doing geotechnical coring, scientific coring, and that's the first part of mostly in the siting and permitting of offshore wind, is basically taking core samples so they know of the substructure of the soils. But really wanted to get into the later installation ports.
Yeah. What do you think are the strengths that the Gulf of Mexico industry can bring up to the East Coast, given the early state now of wind energy, but obviously the interest that it's generated?
My personal view is historically there's an even probably a longer and richer history of maritime involvement on the East Coast with whaling and commercial shipping or commercial fishing, and then subsequently large container commercial shipping and inland tug and barge. But what with no offshore oil and gas, or as we have in the Gulf of Mexico with 3,000 different platforms and the distributed vessel infrastructure and docks and ports to handle all those different platforms, that doesn't exist on the East Coast. So there was some difference whenever I got there on the level of support I was able to get. Recently been asked questions about how local businesses up on the East Coast they do what they do to support maritime industry, but how they need to stretch their existing business model in order to better accommodate the type of vessels that will be coming in for offshore wind. And a lot of it is the 24/7, 365 mentality. And another thing that I think the U.S. Oil and gas industry brings is a work safety mentality. You know, a lot of post BP, we had a lot of SMS and compliancy growth in the Gulf of Mexico, and the European developers that are coming over to develop the offshore wind basically see that as a high value. So the primary things are the experience. What will make U.S. wind really work, I truly believe, is the European experience coming over with their help, the local content of East Coast and the people and businesses there to support, and lastly, the Gulf of Mexico oil and gas vessel, workboat players and support infrastructure coming up to make that supply chain work.
You have a long family history in the Gulf of Mexico industry. I mean, do you see parallels with what's happened there in the past century and what's going on right now in the Northeast?
Absolutely. Probably 40, 50 years ago, my dad was, at the time of the rise of the Cajun Mariner, looking out in the Gulf of Mexico and saw a great opportunity as oil companies were talking about how much they would invest in the Gulf. And I'm now here 50 years later, hearing of 24 gigawatts and millions of dollars of lease sale by BOEM, and I see it. It's no longer in the backyard, and it's right up on the East Coast, but it's still close enough, I think, that vessels from this side of the Gulf could actually make a living there, and I see it as a great opportunity for the next 15, 20 years.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay.